Hi everyone, this is Kevin. I'll cut straight to the chase. And the topic of today is how to draw from imagination figure, like figure drawing, like life drawing, like a human figure. Yeah, basically that's it. And I have to say, please do bear with me because although I have lived in the States for a long time, English I still consider as my second language, and to draw and speak that at the same time, it's quite difficult. Sometimes it's difficult for me. But as you can see, I'm doing a side view right now, and that's really important because anytime you want to draw a three-dimensional thing, which is the human body is a three-dimensional thing too, and anytime you want to draw a three-dimensional thing, you need to understand what it looks like and orthographic views, like what it looks like in front view or side view. And without that knowledge, you can't really, well, you can sort of, but like you wouldn't be able to draw as well with more confidence the human figure from imagination and all various angles without the knowledge of what it looks like and the front view and the side view. So you want to get that straightened out first, like not that body of knowledge straightened out. So here I am here drawing the front view and the side view. Now this isn't really a definitive thing of what the front and side of a human body should look like, but that's, man, this drawing is pretty bad, but it will get better, like, trust me. And let's move on. So the thing I learned, actually the first lesson I learned at art school is something called the peanut shape. This thing, for those who have been following, not me, but like following like YouTubers' videos on how to draw the human body, they may be familiar with this concept. I think like a lot of times you see reincarnations of this concept. Like it's all pretty similar, but they call it different things. Like my teacher called this thing the peanut shape or the kidney shape. And what you do is you basically draw a peanut or kidney shape first. Then what do you do? This is what I will go over pretty soon. Like pretty soon. By pretty soon I mean right now. So what do you do with this? For example, you can add what we call, I don't even remember what this is called. This is called the collarbone. You get the collarbone, you get the pectoral muscles in, and you get what this is. This is the deltoid. So as you can see, we are drawing the torso first, and when we draw the torso, we treat it as a peanut or kidney shape. And after that, you can think of this as something growing like a plant. It's like you're drawing a branch, and then you're drawing the main branch, and then you draw the minor branches branching off this main branch. So we draw the big torso first, then we draw these limbs growing from the torso. That's the big idea behind the peanut-shaped torso thing. And let's see. And well, I'm just drawing and at the same time saying what comes to my mind. And what comes to my mind is one practice the teacher reinforced on us when we were in art school. I was actually studying animation at SVA, and SVA is a pretty big animation school, and on the West Coast, it's in New York. And what the teacher reinforced is like here, like where you see joints, you want to draw it so it sort of overlaps and have this overlapping quality so it looks more three-dimensional. That's a good thing to keep in mind and keep in your practice. Okay, this is okay. And like one other minor detail, this is actually not minor, but like it's pretty obvious. Like when you draw the thigh, there's actually this thing. It's like a little peak, and there's this almost like an egg-shaped thing on the side of the thigh. And now you have your knee, and here you have the other leg. So needless to say, people can start to see the importance of knowing the directional flow of the bones before you go to, I would say, sort of like go to conquer the human body. Like you need to know, like here is the pelvis, right? And here is actually two edges of the pelvis define the bottom of the waist. And from here, the pelvis, here inside you have this big bone, the thigh bone. I think it's called the femur. And like the thing with naming is I don't actually know all the names of the different muscles and bones, but I do know sort of what they look like and where they are positioned. I think that's the most important thing. Like people do get sort of like stuck in this place where they think, oh, I need to know the name of every muscles and where they go from and where they go to. I don't think that's true. I think you need, like what's more important is the form. The form is more important than what the muscles are, because when you think of muscles, you tend to think of flat things, but forms are what these muscles come to become a three-dimensional shape. Like we see all the, like we could open up an anatomy book and we see like all the different flows of the muscles. But what's important is actually the form that these muscles come to become. So when I'm talking about, like, I'm not really worried about like the muscles coming from here and there. I know for a fact, well, not for a fact, like I know more. What I know more is that, okay, when I draw the thigh, there's a peak here and there's an egg shape over there. Like that is more important to me than knowing all the different muscles of the body. And the funny thing is, for lack of a better word, my mother tongue is Mandarin. So I speak Mandarin more fluently than I speak English. And the Mandarin language, there is actually no word for the word draftsmanship. So, funny thing, there are pros and cons for me to explain things in English. But in English, I can use words like form or draftsmanship, where I think the English language is better developed to describe these logical things. So speaking of that, I think, how do we define draftsmanship? I think when drawing a three-dimensional shape, you define draftsmanship by the ability you have to place three-dimensional forms and space. That's how I define draftsmanship. So when you draw the human figure, think of something like this. If you lack the ability to place something as basic as a three-dimensional cube and various angles, and by various I do mean various, like different angles and different views. If you lack that ability, but my pronunciation isn't accurate, so I can stress that by writing it out. If you lack that ability, then I'll put it straight this way. If you lack that ability, then what makes you think you do have the ability to control a form as complex as the human body? If you can't even draw a cube, like their right perspective, then you wouldn't be able to do something like this. Like this isn't even like the human body, and it's like full glory with all the different muscles. Like this is just like one torso shape with 2 legs and 1 head and 2 arms, like that. If you like there's a sequential thing going on here. Like first step, of course you want to get your cube straight, then you get your big body mass here. Then you move on to defining the muscles on this big mass. And all that depends on one word, and it was mentioned before, draftsmanship. Draftsmanship, if you don't have the ability to place forms and space, then it will get in your way of drawing basically anything and everything. So draftsmanship is important. So let's see how I would start drawing the human body. Here is an example already of how I would start. Like you start with a kidney shape, and let's see. Another thing I think the funny thing is, like if you ever do check out my channel, like you can see most of the videos are actually in Chinese or Mandarin, like whichever word you prefer to use. And the thing about these videos is that I often mention great masters, I think, who are great masters from the Western culture. Like because I was educated more in the US, so I kind of, the funny thing is, like in the US, I'm treated as I'm treated pretty good. I mean, of course, racial discrimination, like that basically is such a big topic. You know it exists. I don't even need to say it exists. Like you just know right off the bat. If you are an ethnic people of ethnicity living in the States, you would have encountered racial discrimination. But all that aside, I think, yeah. Let me get back on track. The funny thing is, like in the U.S., I'm sort of sometimes treated almost as an outsider. Like people say, "Oh man, you're way too Taiwanese." Well, I'm from Taiwan, but when I get back to Taiwan, like people say, "Oh, you're sort of like American-born Chinese, like half of that at least." So, like to use like the analogy that's being abused for a lot of times, like I'm almost like a bat, not Batman, but like bat. Like I'm like, you know, like the old fables says, like birds say you are not a bird, you are like a mouse, and the mice say, oh, you have wings, so you're like a bird. So either on the two sides, I don't exactly fit in. That's it. But that's off the track. But what I was going to say is that a lot of book recommendations, even when I do speak Chinese, they are recommendations of books by Western authors, and I can make a recommendation right now. Like if you are into drawing the human figure, you just cannot miss this one guy, Bern Hogarth. Like people who have do some research would have come across this name, Bern Hogarth. Like you just cannot ignore this guy. This guy's got like what? Like dynamic anatomy, dynamic figure drawing, dynamic, like he's got dynamic wrinkles, dynamic lighting. He's dynamic everything. I think that's like his franchise thing. And he actually, if I'm not mistaken, he actually founded a school of visual arts in New York when he was alive. He's He's a man of history. He already passed away. But what I like about Bernd Hogarth is that he has organized the human figure into very, very geometrical shapes. Geometrical shapes like these. Like what do you call this? Like, man, I'm losing my... This is a body of bone. What do you call this? I forgot the name for this, actually. I know this is the collarbone, but this... Oh. I'm not sure. Yeah, I know this is not exactly the right word for it, but let's call this ribs, right? Like you have these ribs. And if you find the right word, please comment below. But the thing is, like, Bernd Hogarth, he boils down things into their geometrical shapes. Like, he wouldn't really draw all these ribs of... Oh, I found it. Yep, it's called the rib cage. He wouldn't really draw the ribs on the rib cage. He would just say, okay, this is a geometric shape. And I think that's really important. Like, if you know something is a geometric shape, you would treat it as that, and you would be able to draw the shape in three-dimensional space in different angles. So you need a certain level of simplification of your shapes, three-dimensional shapes. I don't mean 2D shapes, I mean three-dimensional shapes, in order to flip them, rotate them in your brain and on the paper. And Bernd Hogarth has done a lot of drawings in which he manages to keep these things as geometrical as they can. And because of the geometrical nature of his drawings, you are able to simplify and rotate three-dimensional shapes of the body and space. So I would highly recommend Bernd Hogarth. The other guy that I consider as a modern-day Bernd Hogarth is Will Weston. Will Weston, he used to, I have no idea, I think there's a point in time when he took down his IG account. But when it was up there, you could probably look up Will Weston still in Pinterest, and you would see a lot of really nice drawings. I consider him as the modern-day Bernd Hogarth. Like, his drawings are really geometrical, and he boils the human body, the human figure, into simple shapes that can be managed. I think managing is a really important thing right here. Like, let me draw something here. Like, when you do draw the human body, like, what is the most important thing? What is the most important thing when you draw the human body? I don't think it's the shape of the leg or the feet. I don't think it's that. I don't think it's the... I do think it's the proportions, yes, of course. But there's something that's equally, if not more important. Let me cut straight to the chase. It's actually the gesture. Like, the gesture has to be correct. Well, it doesn't have to be correct, but I mean, of course, it would be better if you have a good gesture. And where does that come from? The gesture, I think it's the one thing we talk about in like more advanced figure drawing back then in my very old days in SVA is a word called hierarchy. Hierarchy means what you place in terms of importance when you do draw the human figure. I think one needs to place the hierarchy correctly. If you do that, then you would say what's more important than these shapes are how these different shapes are arranged to form the human body. So you are not looking at shapes. You are looking at the relationship of different shapes. That's a big thing. That's almost how I would call, for lack of a better word, a mind breaker. It breaks your existing knowledge. And I'm telling you that the most important thing is not the shapes you draw, but the relationship of individual little shapes of the human body. And what is that relationship called? It's called the human gesture. Gesture is the biggest thing that's important in a drawing. So if you cannot simplify these different parts into more simple things, then you cannot, as a human being, well, if you are, let me write his name down. I'm sure people who are into drawing know this guy. Unless you're Kim Jong-il, then you have problem without simplifying stuff. Like you will have to simplify the different a lot of muscles you see into like these simple shapes. Then you think about how to arrange these shapes, and the arrangement of these shapes is called the gesture of the human body. And to know, to dive deeper into this, that I'm gonna come up with another short thing I'm gonna talk about. That's the thing. If you are in art school, that's a whole nother world or question. But if you've never been to art school, you're just trying to learn things by yourself, then you need to be aware of this fact. The fact is, there's a high chance that if you are in art school, you will be spending 2 years, and then these 2 years, every day, 1 day, and every day, 1 day, and 1 week, you spend 3 hours. No, not 3 hours. 6 hours drawing the naked human body. That's called life drawing. Of course, we know that, and that's 2 years. Every week, 1 day, 6 hours of life drawing. If you're trying to learn by yourself and you're wondering why is it that other people are drawing better than me, there's a high chance it's because of that. You're missing that. You're missing that mileage. And that mileage, I would say that there are places, there are drawing studios where you just go and you can draw the naked human body. I think that's really important. Like, you have to go through that. I mean, if you can't go through that, then as a drawing teacher, I face this challenge. What challenge? It's a simple question of budget. I don't have the budget to hire a live model and have my student draw from live models. So what do I do? Actually, I think Dragon Ball Z is still a big thing in the US. Actually, I buy figures of Dragon Ball Z and have them draw these figures, toy figures. And actually they do work pretty well, and that's pretty much it. Like, that's something you can do too. Like, buy figures or sculptures and draw from them if you don't really have access to a live drawing studio, like a naked model. By that I mean. And here you can see I'm coloring in, shading in. This is I have no idea what this muscle is called. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's called latissimus something. All the muscle names are sort of Latin related, so that's one thing. And from this, actually, there's these ribs, and like these ribs that like if you magnify that, this is what you see. Like, there are ribs and these tiny triangular muscles here. there's like 3 or 4 of them. I don't really remember, but like the big things I do know are the gist of things. Like I'm not by any means an anatomy expert, but I do think I have the ability to capture things in terms of their gesture. Okay, so let's see. I have mentioned Bern Hogarth and Will Weston, but of course the name you cannot miss when you do learn how to draw figure drawing is Andrew Loomis, right? Like people who have done their research will know this name by default. And I would say like I have started drawing the human figure with its kidney shape, but there's another approach by Andrew Loomis. What he does is like he does this ribcage shape first, and then he says, okay, we have this back spine, and then we have these 2 discs which signify, which is a symbol. Like when you draw anything, unless you go hyper realism with like those hyper realistic photorealistic things, like you are drawing basically a symbol which symbolizes what you are trying to portray. And Andrew Loomis does this one thing. He does the rib cage, and then he does the head, and then he does the pelvis discs, and then he does these like almost stick-like things, but you can see there's a flow. The flow comes from the way these bones, like if you take the thigh bone, which is the femur, if you take that and you think of the direction it grows in, and you think of the direction the leg grows in, then you would see there's a natural gesture to the way the legs are. Okay, there's that. So if I were you, and I'm like an absolute beginner, I would say start with Andrew Loomis. And he does this other thing which is pretty cool. Like he actually, on top of the rib cage, he actually draws this cape-like thing. And this cape-like thing is funny. Like it's actually a combination. Like I look at it this way. I look at it as a combination of deltoid and pectoral muscles together, and they form like a cape. This is pretty nice because, well, I sound super Chinese, but man, that's just me. This is pretty nice because the thing is, like, a lot of people, they draw this wrong. Like, I don't really do this 100% correct, but like when you draw a person raising his arms, you need to consider the fact that this thing, the chest muscles, the pectoral muscles, and the deltoids, they are actually like a cape. They're actually like a cape. So it's cool that Andrew Loomis drew this like a cape. So when you raise the arms, like you have this thing. Like I've shaded the pectoral and the deltoid muscles like that, and here you have the top of the rib cage. No, this is actually the bottom of the rib cage and the top of the pecs. When I say 6 packs, and you have the head, and he's probably looking up. So it's cool. He treated the deltoids and the chest muscles like that. Another thing I would recommend you do when you think about figure drawing is actually, like, there's a lot of cool anatomy books out there. I would recommend this one book. It's called Morpho. Morpho is a pretty cool book. Why? Because I think with anatomy books, I've seen a lot of anatomy books, and some of them is this thing, like they have photos of nudes. And if you think about it, like, I don't really need to go through an anatomy book to find no photos of nudes. And I think what's better than photos of nudes is like it's more like a rearranged information, which is basically a drawing. drawing of the construction of these nude bodies. So Morpho is good in that way. And the funny thing is Morpho, the author of this book, is actually, apparently she teaches at Goblins. That's the big thing, because Goblins, I don't even know how to correctly pronounce his name. It's a big animation school in France, and like, this is just a personal opinion. I would consider it almost as like the best, the school to go to for animation, traditional animation. Well, maybe it's great in computer animation. I don't know, but I've seen some pretty sick traditional animation stuff from that school. And to be an instruction which teaches anatomy at that school, and to write a book called Morpho, well, I would certainly check it out. Check out this book. I mean, this channel has only so many views. I'm not like really putting an advertisement of a book, but I'm saying check out. So, what are some other recommendations? I would say when you're drawing a human body, I've already told you like how I would start drawing a human body. Like, there's a kidney shape, and there's the Angelumous ribcage, pelvis, and your bones matchstick guy. That's 2 ways. And with Loomis, like, he does this cape thing on top of his ribcage. And you look at Bernard Hogarth, well, Western. What else can you do? Okay, here's the last thing. When you look at anatomy books like Morpho, you have 2 options. One, you can draw from it. The other one is less obvious. You can actually make a clay sculpture out of it. Like anything, any form you see, you try to interpret it and try to see if you can make it in 3-dimensional space and 3-dimensional reality with clay. And that's really important, because something you might have to draw 20 times to remember, but may only take you 3 times to make with clay to remember. That's how, or I can't really say for everyone, I can't say that's how the human brain works, but I can say that's how my brain works. Like, it's certainly easier to remember something you've made, because I think when you make something with clay, you actually do need to know every indentations, every ups and downs, every valley, every peaks of the human anatomy. But with drawing, you are like less challenged. Like I can do something like that, and that's like an arm. But like with clay, I actually need to know, okay, this goes down here, this goes up here, and here's a tricep, and here, there. I mean, with clay, I need to know that surface information. So I think, yeah, one big recommendation, do clay. That sounded wrong, but you get what I mean. So here it is, like 33 minutes, and I haven't done an English video in years. And if you have watched the video to this point, well, I thank you. That's like 33 minutes of your life, and you were willing to spend it watching me just draw and talk. And this is Kevin checking out. Well, that sounded weird. This is Kevin. Thank you for watching, and see you hopefully next time. Yeah, that's it. See ya.